Hello Internet, my name's Darren Whitelaw and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all tuning in for the ANZSOG Executive Masters Public Administration webinar and to our guest presenters. As I said, I'm Darren Whitelaw from Victoria's Department of Premier and Cabinet, and importantly for this occasion, I'm actually an EMPA alumnus from the 2006 cohort, and I'll be your moderator today. It's actually been 10 years ago this year that I started the Executive Masters. And I know what you're thinking. I must have been really young when I enrolled. Thank you for that. But it was one of the most important career decisions that I ever made, and one that's been extremely worthwhile. So today it's my job to introduce you to our speakers, to keep things flowing, and to make sure that all of your questions get answered. We'll be answering them at the end, but you can ask the questions any time, just at the Ask a Question button in the bottom right of your screen. The idea is that I can help you get the most out of this webinar. You can ask the questions that you need in order to be better informed about the Executive Masters program. So just use the Ask Questions button at any time, and as I said, we'll get to them at the end. So let me introduce our presenters. So we have Professor Gary Banks, who's the CEO and Dean of ANZSOG. He's going to be providing an overview about the School of Government. We then have Professor Michael Mintram, who's the Academic Director of the program, and he's going to be providing an overview about the Executive Masters of Public Administration. And we also have a fellow alumnus for the most recent graduating cohort, Nick Kondradoff, who's the Manager of Service Agreement Policy Branch at Victoria's Department of Education and Training. He's from the 2014 cohort, and he's our alumni to share his experience, the most recent experience in the Masters program. For those of you in the unlikely event that you do have any technology issues, please call our webinar partner Redback Conferencing on the numbers that are on the screen at the moment. As I said, we'll be having a question and answer at the end, and you can submit a question at any time through the Ask a Question button on the right of the screen. When you ask a question, please include your name and the email address that you logged in. And in the unlikely event that we're not able to answer your questions today, someone from ANZSOG will email you back with a detailed and personalised response to the question that you asked. There's also, interestingly, a bunch of frequently asked questions on the ANZSOG site where you're at today under Resource Library. And there's also some useful links regarding the Executive Masters, so feel free to have a look and see if any of your questions are answered there. So let's get things underway. I'd like to call on Professor Banks to explain a bit more about the School of Government.
Thanks, Darren, and hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be back here again doing this webinar for the EMPA, and my colleague Mike Mintram is going to talk all about the EMPA. I thought I'd just say a few words about ANZSOG. I've been Dean here now for just over 3 years, and before that had a very long career in government. For 15 years I chaired the Productivity Commission. I don't know how I lasted that long, but there you go. It's an exciting place to be, but it gave me a strong sense that building capability, particularly in the leadership cohort, is a crucial thing if we're going to be delivering public value, all of us. And so when I left the Productivity Commission, it seemed a natural place to come to be part of that capability building process, and I haven't been disappointed. I think ANZSOG has deservedly, in a quite short period of time, really nearly a decade and a half, built up a world reputation as a centre of excellence in executive education and research. So it's been great to have the opportunity to lead that and to re-engage with people like Darren, who keeps coming back and helping us out and does it for nothing, Darren. So thanks very much for that. I think you do it for nothing.
I certainly do.
Right.
They sort of say, that once you've gone through the program, you become a fanzog. So that's those ties never break.
And that's a point that I'd sort of come to at the end. The alumni group is extensive, well connected, and creates a situation of learning for life, really, once you've been to an ANZSOG course. The thing about ANZSOG was that if it hadn't been created, we'd have to create it today, because there was nothing like it back when it started, and there's nothing quite like it now. An institution that draws on the network of all the universities around Australia and New Zealand, all the member governments from Australia and New Zealand, 10 in all, to create a learning environment that's highly relevant, that picks up themes and issues in common that all people in government are grappling with, and as I said, focuses on people with leadership potential who will have a beneficial effect on their organisations and ultimately on delivering value for citizens. So ANZSOG was created by government for government, and that also makes it somewhat unique in the universe of such organisations. It has a board that comprises senior people from central agencies in government as well as from universities, and it's a consortium in which there's a lot of collaboration across government and also across the universities. It's a very innovative model which was designed to be fit for purpose for Australia and New Zealand and the federal system that exists within Australia. If I think of two words that sums up the kind of offerings we have, they both start with R, Darren: rigour and relevance. And we bring the best, I think, of academic excellence and rigour to ANZSOG, along with the best of practical experience from the practitioners that we have in almost every course that we do. And you get that blend of academic and people who seriously know what they're talking about from within government as well. And when you put the two together, it's an incredibly powerful thing. And I've had the privilege of seeing that occur across the whole range of ANZSOG offerings. So we have executive education courses that start with the Executive Master of Public Administration, which we're going to talk about in a moment, going right through to a CEO forum where we get 20 CEOs together for a couple of days with Professor Mark Moore from Harvard and talk about the things that are on their mind and the issues that they're concerned with. And it's a very powerful experience to see that combination of rigour and relevance. We also have forums for public discussion, what I like to call safe spaces for policy discussion, which have been expanding over time. We have an international programs of various kinds, actually, with bilateral programs with major countries like China and India, but also international participants in courses like the Executive Fellows Program. So when you're part of ANZSOG, in a sense, you become part of a global network of which ANZSOG's an important part. Within Australia, one of the great strengths of ANZSOG, as I mentioned, was it draws on all the jurisdictions, so that in any ANZSOG course, including the EMPA, your fellow participants in the course will come from departments and governments right across the country and in New Zealand, and indeed in some of our programs from the region more widely. That not only gives you opportunities to learn a lot from your colleagues in the classroom, so to speak, but also it builds a professional network of lasting value which people find very, very useful. So, and of course some of those people go on to become heads of agencies, and increasingly we're seeing them now coming back into ANZSOG in a very senior capacity through the CEO forum that we operate. So Darren, I'll end it there, but I'm very happy to take questions. I've got a lot more I could say about ANZSOG, but I'm anxious to have Professor Mintram tell everybody about the Executive Masters of Public Administration.
Well, that's a perfect introduction. Thank you, Professor Banks. Professor Mintram, would you like to talk about the Executive Masters Program?
Yeah, thanks very much, Darren. Well, I think one of the most important things to understand about the degree is that we see ourselves very consciously as developing the next generation of public sector leaders, and so we select very rigorously to bring people into the program, and then we work with people for a period of 2 years to really get the skills and knowledge that they need in order to step up to those leadership roles. The degree is a postgraduate qualification, and it's actually awarded by our university partners, but we do most of the teaching for the degree. It's multidisciplinary in nature, and I'm going to talk in a moment about each of the subjects in it. It's taught by people from Australia and New Zealand, as well as being augmented by some international faculty that come in. And as Gary mentioned, one of the features of the degree is that we bring in practitioners, people in government, senior roles in government, who can come and talk about their experiences and talk to particular points that are relevant to the curriculum on given days. One of the other things that is really wonderful about this degree is that because you're in a room with close to 100 other people who are doing the degree with you, who have similar experience to you, you can learn a lot from your peers. So there are these really amazing peer-to-peer learning opportunities within the degree, which makes it quite unique as a learning opportunity. Well, let me turn now to the structure of the degree itself, the degree course. And just probably most usefully for you, I think, is just talk a little bit about the core subjects that we offer. You can see other information about the degree there, the requirement that you do a public sector financial management course at your home university, and then you get to choose elective courses and really customise the degree for yourself. And it's always amazing to me as academic director to see the range of topics that people want to choose for their electives and put in the degree. So there's a core component that I'll talk about now so that everyone gets that consistent training, but there is actually a lot of space for you to customise the degree as you want. Well, in the first year we bring everyone together for the start in February here in Melbourne. We come together for a week, and the degree kicks off with Delivering Public Value, which is a course taught by my colleague Professor John Orford, and really takes its starting point with the work that Professor Mark Moore from Harvard developed on how public value is created. We really take that as a theme throughout the whole degree. Also in that first week we kick off the subject which is now becoming a kind of a chorus line throughout the degree, and that is called Managing Public Sector Organisations, and we spend time in that talking about how to create high performance organisations, how to maintain a client focus, how to develop motivation and strong trust within organisations, and how to be effective at leading change within organisations. And that chorus line runs throughout the whole degree, both the first year and the second year. Each time we bring everyone together for a week of intensive learning, we devote a day to that new subject. Then we have people do Governing in a Market Economy, which is a course that covers the main features of public sector economics, talks about externalities and public goods, all the sort of rationales for why government might exist, and then talks about tools that government often uses, and also has a component in there around international economics as well. All of that is really laying the foundations for a subject called Designing Public Policies and Programs, where we ask you to think about current policy challenges and how you might address them. In the last couple of years we've designed that, we've been running that course so that you work with others to think about how to produce a really effective policy shop within your department or agency, and develop a bit of a blueprint for that. And of course this creates a great opportunity for people in the subject to talk during that week, talk together about what makes for effective advising, what parts of the policy function within their departments that they're coming from at the moment are working well, what's not working so well, sharing experiences in that kind of way, and then of course talking with practitioners who are leading policy development all the time, and so we get a fairly rich understanding of the challenges for public sector leaders who are working in the policy space. We round out the first year with a core subject called Decision Making Under Uncertainty, which really focuses on the development of evidence-based policy and what is appropriate evidence to use when making policy proposals, and how to set up evaluations of programs that have been put in place and drawing lessons from those, that kind of thing. In our second year we start off in February in Sydney each year with Governing by the Rules, which is led by Professor Ari Freiberg, and he often brings in a lot of people from the law fraternity in Australia to talk about aspects of government and the law and of regulation. And then we have Leading Public Sector Change, which is a course led by Professor Paul de Hart from Utrecht University, and he talks about what it takes to be an effective leader in the public sector, and what sort of things you need to do to drive change and drive reform agendas effectively, because we know that many reform agendas are started and don't end well. We're training people to do it in a way that is consistently smart from the start, well planned and well executed, and makes a difference in terms of delivering public value. Right throughout our second year we have what's called a work-based project, where teams of students in the degree work together on topics that have been nominated by agencies within our member governments. So we go out and solicit challenges or research problems that departments would like teams to work on for a year to solve. And it really is a great opportunity to think about contemporary policy and program issues, and think about how a rigorous research approach could help to resolve those issues and make recommendations for making improvements in the future. So it's a wonderful opportunity to really test the knowledge that you've built over the last couple of years within the degree in that very applied situation. Well, now if I move to talking about the way that the course is delivered and a couple of other things, it's a degree that is, I think, characterised a lot by the emphasis that we put on the face-to-face interactions and the conversations, the talking around cases, that kind of thing that happens in the classroom. Everyone comes to the room well prepared. There's lots of opportunities to contribute insights from your own experience, and all of our academics who are in the classroom have been very well trained as facilitators, as people who are drawing knowledge from the room, not there talking about their own experiences or their own knowledge, but actually eliciting knowledge from the room. So it makes for a very dynamic learning environment, and people very quickly understand the importance of taking responsibility for their own learning, and they contribute in very, very effective ways to that process. The other thing that I wanted to mention just in this part is the mentoring program that we have in the degree. Right at the start of the degree, when you come into it, we get the author of a book called Making Mentoring Work, Peter Wilson, to come and talk with us about what it means to be in a good mentoring relationship. And the reason we've done that is we want you to think hard about what mentoring can do for you before you go and select a mentor for yourself. So within the first 6 months of the degree, you've given a chance to think about who you would like to choose from your jurisdiction, usually from your own department, someone who's more senior to you who could be a mentor for you for the time that you're in the degree, but hopefully for the future. A big part of this mentoring program is that it helps you to come to understand the importance of having mentors in your career and throughout your career, and how to manage those mentoring relationships effectively and get the most out of them. So we see that as quite important as a component of the degree, and again something that really distinguishes it from typical postgraduate degree offerings. If I now move on to just a couple of points now about creating future leaders. I guess one of the key things that I wanted to emphasise here is just the way that the degree does equip you to be an effective leader, those courses that I talked about before, but also the experience of going through it with a cohort of other people who are like-minded and equally ambitious as you, I think is very good training for going on to be someone who can make good points, present well, think through counter-arguments before you confront them, that kind of thing. So there's a lot there. Probably one thing that I've mentioned there about leadership training is that because you're in that situation with other peers who are equally ambitious, you are getting that chance to continuously test out your style, your leadership style, and thinking about how you could improve it and make differences around it. And we create these opportunities through giving presentations, through having debates, various other pedagogical practices that we have that are designed to really draw out the leadership capabilities that you have, and encouraging you to think about your own style of leadership. That we're not trying to sort of develop a plain vanilla type of leadership or one size fits all kind of leadership. It's actually saying, what is it about you that you see as your essential characteristics that are important as a leader, and how do you play up those as you go through your career. Finally, I just wanted to talk to you about the application process. What we're looking for is strong evidence of leadership potential, and that's often something that comes through from letters of recommendation that accompany your application, but also the way that you talk about your previous experiences and the trajectory that you see for yourself. We like to see people having a strong commitment to having a career in the public sector, being committed to shared learning, because that's such a vital part of the degree process, and needing to demonstrated capability of completing a master's degree, so that's why we look very closely at how well you've performed in your undergraduate studies. Given that, we're actually pretty forgiving in terms of the kind of backgrounds that you have in your university training before you come and take the degree. And we also list down there in the criteria having at least 5 years of relevant work experience. And I think it's important to note that, again, we construe that term relevance fairly broadly, so that if you can make a convincing argument as to why the previous 5 years of your experience is relevant to doing this degree, then we will take that very seriously. That's probably about as much as I want to say for now. There may be follow-up questions and things that I can answer.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for that one. I'm now going to introduce Nick, who's here to speak about his own experience of doing the Executive Masters program. So, as part of the 2014 cohort, he's recently graduated, so I think he's got a fresh perspective on which he can explain some of that. So, Nick, can you tell us what you thought of the Masters program?
Thank you very much, Darren. Thank you for inviting me to speak about my thoughts about the program, and also thanks to Gary and thanks to Michael for allowing me to sit beside you and reflect on the past 2 years and to share my experiences and hopefully encourage and inspire other people to take a very similar journey to my own. I thought I'd break down my presentation to this point in time, where you're at the moment, about to enrol in or considering enrolling in the unit or the course, and what it can offer to you, my experience through the process as well, and learnings that I gained, and now the new chapter that I'm about to embark on, that I've just recently graduated from the EMPA. But in summary, I am a proud career public servant. I've been in the institution now for 15 years, and at the time of enrolling I had a number of work experiences across the APS and the VPS, both in central policy areas and in frontline service delivery. But what I didn't have behind me to back me up was the theoretical understandings and appreciations of the public service. And so I looked to this course as that tool, as that opportunity for me to be able to expand my knowledge and experience, noting that I wanted to forge a long-standing career within the public service. I remember speaking to respected peers, people that had gone through the course before me, people that work in our HR and learning and development areas, to make sure that I was picking a course that was best for me. And I think that through all of those conversations, I was able to submit a more well-rounded and robust application. And I encourage any of you that are considering this process also to dip into the networks around you within your own organisations, or certainly come to me and I'll leave my details with the team offline. If you've got any questions about the application process, I'm very willing to assist. The application process takes a number of months, and as Michael mentioned, it's quite a rigorous process. So you don't necessarily know until around October, and then you're invited into the first round of residentials in February of next year. At this point, I'd like to also say that I think that it's a terrific promotion and investment from the learning and the development teams and the HR teams within the organisations to be able to support and fund this. It certainly sends a clear message that you're wanting to upskill the future leaders, that you acknowledge the professionalism of the institution of the public service, and that you're willing to foster and develop continuous learning within each of your staff across the organisation. So I thank you, and certainly thank my own organisation for sponsoring me to go through this journey as well. I do remember with trepidation and fear, actually, the first day of the residential down here in Melbourne at Monash University, and being surrounded by such inspiring, motivating, intelligent people around me, both the lecturers, the facilitators, but also, most importantly, the people that were going on this journey with me, my fellow students. And it was through that trepidation and fear that I was able to, I guess, channel it and foster it into future learnings and new learnings. I was able to develop the networks and make the connections across all of the jurisdictions, as Michael and Gary have also mentioned as well. It's a terrific benefit in that respect, learning from people both in the residentials, but outside of the residentials as well, as you foster and develop those relationships. It's certainly something that I depend on now as I currently progress in my public service career. It's a 2-year journey and it's a hard slog, but you can get through it. If I can get through it, then anyone can get through it. And it's through self-discipline, it's through setting up routines and practices. It's about being clear and honest to your family and to your work colleagues about the deadlines and the expectations that ANZSOG has of you. But as long as you get all of those fundamentals in line, I can guarantee that you'll get through it. And if I can again, anyone can as well. And to know that you won't be there doing the journey on your own. You've got the support of Michael and Gary and a whole team of people behind the scenes within the ANZSOG network that are here to help you as well. Throughout the 2 years, it culminates in a 12-month research project in second year, as Michael mentioned. And at the very end of that, you are invited through to a residential in Wellington. And I won't spill the secret, but it is a clear highlight, going down to Wellington and celebrating the 2 years before you with your colleagues and your fellow students. It's a terrific highlight, and I still reflect back on it now, and it still gives me goosebumps, to be honest. So in the next chapter that I'm about to embark on, the chapter beyond the Masters program, I am now looking to developing those relationships with the ANZSOG graduates, of which there are many, and across all jurisdictions within Australia and New Zealand and abroad, and to foster those relationships in a positive way, to be able to connect on them, both for my own selfish purposes, to be able to advance my career, because there are many people above me that are much more senior and leading organisations, as Gary mentioned, that I'll certainly be able to connect with, but also on the day-to-day transactional tasks. When I don't know how to progress with an activity, or I can't necessarily find the solution myself, I know that there is a whole family of people within the ANZSOG graduate program that can assist me through that process. I am terrifically proud to be invited to come through the Masters program and to be recognised as someone that could take on this journey, and to encourage everyone out there that's listening as well to take the leap of faith and to find the courage in yourself to take on the journey. I would be very surprised if you regret it. In fact, I'd be more inclined to suggest that you would love every twist and turn that the Masters offers you.
What a fantastic endorsement from one of the most recent graduates of the program. In terms of the networking opportunities, as the former president of the ANZSOG Alumni, I guess I just wanted to mirror and reinforce those opportunities, that the learning doesn't stop when you leave the class, when the learning doesn't stop when you complete the course. There is a strong networks of graduates from the ANZSOG programs in states and territories across Australia, and there are regular events and activities in order to top up the knowledge that you get. Through ANZSOG, we're fortunate enough to get access to some fantastic speakers, academics, thought leaders, both locally and those from renowned institutions such as the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and the London School of Economics, and a range of other international institutions. And as alumnus, you get exclusive opportunities to listen to these thought leaders and provide the latest thinking around public policy and public administration challenges. Look, just a reminder before I go on is to make sure you answer the questions. To ask a question, and I'll be reading those questions in a second when we finish. I also just wanted to say that there is another opportunity annually through the ANZSOG conference, and there, for those people who have graduated from the program, there's a refresher program, again to top up in a formal way for those people who have been a number of years through the program, to make sure that knowledge and theory is keeping pace with the latest thinking and research. So that said, I'd like to now ask you to use the Ask a Question box. In a second, I'll be getting those questions to read out to you, to read out to the panel, and ask those questions. But before we do that, Nick, I want to ask you a question. How do you manage to balance work and life pressures when you're also studying a rigorous academic degree?
it was a learning experience. It was something that I wasn't probably able to entirely refine until 6 months into the journey, until I had an appreciation of how much was required of me and the demands of the master's program. But at the start, you do receive a lot of support from the administration here within ANZSOG. They do set up the expectations quite clearly about the deliverables, the assignments that you're required to deliver, and provide you with as much advance warning as possible. So you take that knowledge and you take it back into your own organisation and you communicate it appropriately so that everyone else is on the same page as you and that everyone else knows that the pressures are impending. You also take that knowledge and that information back to your home environment and humbly ask for charity at home and request that they release you from your, I would imagine, other responsibilities back at home. And it's through that magic process that you're able to dedicate the time and energy necessary to be able to commit to the, through to the deliverables. But things happen to all of us, and if you do feel that this is a point of anxiety for you and that you won't be able to meet the deadlines, I encourage you to have those frank conversations very early with the administration here in ANZSOG, because you will receive the appropriate support necessary, and they'll do what they can to be able to make your journey as comfortable and as streamlined and as simple and stress-free as possible.
Thanks, Steve. Professor Banks, ANZSOG is arguably the most prestigious school of government within the region. What does a degree from ANZSOG do for people's careers?
Well, I mean, the two things go together in that you only gain prestige if the degree is really providing something for those who participate in it. We regularly are in touch with our alumni and we survey them on a regular basis. And what's really striking is every time we're talking to them or surveying them, they're another rung up the ladder. So you can certainly see the personal career progression of our alumni. And as I indicated right at the start, increasingly now we're seeing people who are heading departments and agencies who've done not just the Executive Fellows program, but also the Executive Master of Public Administration. So that's telling me that this degree is really helpful for people in their careers. The other dimension of it, though, is that, of course, these people are in turn passing on what they know in the way they lead within their own organisations, and their success in that and really is what predetermines, the further steps in their career. So that prestige really reflects, I think, the on-the-ground reality of the enhanced performance of the people who go through the course. The second thing I'd say is the prestige partly reflects also the eminent researchers we have at ANZSOG and publishing in first-rate journals around the world who've helped spread the word about ANZSOG as a place of excellence in academic research. So, as I say, the two things go together, illustrated by the fact that the OECD in Paris has a network of national schools of government, and ANZSOG is one of the steering committees on the steering committee of that international network, and it underlines the point you make, I think, about how it's viewed internationally.
Fantastic. Michael, what do you look for in a student when you're looking for someone? There's a bunch of people sitting watching this webinar at the moment thinking, oh, is it right? Is it for me? Can you sort of suggest what are the kind of people that you're looking for?
Well, I think it's people who have had challenges in the past, tough assignments that they've had to work through, and have demonstrated real capability in working through that, bringing teams along with them, and also looking to the future, people who have a pretty clear sense of where they want to go career-wise and what it is that they see in their attributes that mark them out as leaders. Fantastic.
So I think that's bringing us to the end of our Q&A session. You've got another couple of seconds to, if you still need to ask a question, just by the Ask button down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But if there are no more questions coming forward, then what I invite you to do is use the Contact Us function on the ANZSOG website. And if you've got a follow-up question you'd like to ask after watching this webinar, please use the Contact Us section and email your questions to ANZSOG, and they'll be able to answer that directly. So I'd like to thank our panel. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Gary, for sharing your insights and your time. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in and giving up some of your time to understand whether or not the ANZSOG Executive Masters program is right for you. And through the words of Nick and also my own experience, I urge you to put in an application and join that growing family of ANZSOG alumnus around Australia and New Zealand. Thanks very much. Bye.